Hello out there and welcome to Public Conscience. This is the anti-corruption program produced by the Progressive Impact Organization for Community Development, PRIMORG. PRIMORG is a civil society organization with the mandate to promote good governance, participation and accountability in Nigeria. I am Adaobi Obiabumo with Chidozie Ogbonnaya.
Welcome to the program.
On Public Conscience, we seek to evolve a corruption-free society through the amplification of corruption stories reported by our partner media organizations and drawing citizens and government attention for democratic actions against it. We also promote integrity by focusing on rare cases of the display of honesty by public and private individuals in the course of their normal activities. The MacArthur Foundation supports the production of this program.
Today we will be focusing on the age-long call for cost of governance to be reduced in Nigeria, most especially given the harsh economic times orchestrated by years of mismanagement of funds, corruption, and lack of sincerity of purpose in the public sector.
It is ostensibly clear for the blind to see that efforts to prune the rising cost of governance in Nigeria must be pursued with all sincerity going forward. And this concern resonates with a lot of Nigerians, including political office holders. Recall that since Nigeria's return to democracy in 1999, various governments have spoken about reducing the cost of governance. But is the government serious about reducing the cost of governance or playing lip service to the situation of things?
Big question there, Adobe. But as of today, Nigeria's revenue generation can no longer comfortably service public debts, which is a signal that urgent action must be taken by the government. As Nigeria struggles with poor revenue generation, the little fund available is challenged by misappropriation and other forms of public sector corruption.
There are so many unanswered questions, and if Nigeria must make progress with reducing the cost of governance, then the government must change its approach. For instance, government agencies are well over 600 today, and some of them are duplicating duties. These agencies must have director generals and every other paraphernalia of office.
Many will ask, where is the Orosonye report on cutting down the number of government agencies? What about the overbloated budgets? What of the huge salaries and allowances received by members of the National Assembly and the luxurious lifestyle of political appointees? Also, the presidential fleet, and so on.
President Muhammadu Buhari promised to reduce the cost of governance before now. Our aim today is to draw the attention of President Buhari to the need to reduce the cost of governance urgently. And for you listening to us, how do you think the cost of governance can be reduced in Nigeria? Do you think corruption is an incentive for the government's lack of will to reduce costs over the years? Which aspect of governance needs to be cut down urgently? And do you think we have revenue or leadership challenges with regard to tackling Nigeria's economic problems?
Be ready to join us through phone and text messages in the course of the conversation. The WhatsApp phone line to send your message is 09022656167. That is 09022656167. Please indicate your name and your location when sending your message. This number is for messages only. Let me quickly remind you that we have been talking about reducing the cost of governance and the hurdles before the federal government. And according to the federal government, there is revenue shortfall. State governments may not have what to share if care is not taken.
Recall that state governors had recently put forward over 30 recommendations to President Buhari to shore up more revenues for the country. Some of the recommendations include eliminating the petrol subsidy, increase in taxes, and reducing the service duration of civil servants. But joining us in the studio to discuss the rising cost of governance and other issues bordering good governance and accountability in the public sector is the convener, Campaign for Transformative Governance, Jaye Jaskia.
Thank you.
We are also joined by the publisher of Fresh News online newspaper, Desmond Utowen.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
We will start the conversation today with Jaye Jaskia. From 1999, various governments and leaders have spoken about cutting down the cost of governance. What is your assessment of the situation, and why has cutting the cost of governance become a daunting task for government?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. The first thing that I'm going to do is to I want to actually repose the question and then to probably redirect our attention. So I'm asking the question: do we have, is cost of governance a problem? And is there any form of governance that has no cost attached to it? Absolutely no. So what we face, what we have, and why we are talking about cost of governance today is because we have a cost of governance crisis. So there's a crisis around cost of governance, because it's important to understand that governance, there is cost attached to governance. So the challenge here is what therefore is the situation, and what therefore is the problem, and why do we say we have a cost of governance crisis? And the cost of governance crisis is basically, truly, really around leakages, wastage, and corruption. And I know that a number of persons have also put the size of government as part of into that mix. I will be very careful and cautious about putting the size of government. And I will say this, and I'm saying this for this reason. So if you look at our history as a country, because you spoke about from 1999, but if you look at our history as a country, the Nigerian state, at its inception, when it was formed, when it was being formed and established, and at independence, was modeled around what was called a developmental state. So it was a developmental state model. So it was a state that was supposed to lead the development process. And because that state was supposed to lead the development process, you had several aspects of development that the state then also created agencies that would lead those aspects of development. And so in that kind of situation, then that was a state that was fit for purpose. And you could see the leaps and bounds in the first 4 to 5, in the first 4 or 5 year development plans that the country ran. But in the 1990s, and with the global economic crisis and the structural adjustment program and the rest of that, the state became hollowed of its responsibility. So we no longer had a state that was leading development. We had a state that was simply supposed to be, that had no business, with development. And that was the mantra. And so what you had was that the state became hollowed out. And then you had agencies retained from a period when the state was supposed to perform this role. You still had those agencies retained when the state was no longer performing those roles. And one of the biggest things that happened when that happened was that it was also the period that laid the foundation for what I call the revenue collection crisis. We don't have a revenue generation crisis.
So what do we have? We
have a revenue collection crisis. See, this is an economy that is nearly $400 billion economy. It's supposed to be the largest in Africa. You look at the South African economy, and you look at the Egyptian economy, the next two economies to it, and you look at the size of the revenue that the state collects, and you look at the size of the revenue that the Nigerian state collects. It's simply just, it beggars the question that how can you have this size of the economy and your revenue generation is $3 billion? The revenue that you collect is between $3 and $12 billion annually. So the problem is really with how do you collect revenue that is there. And we did a study last year, and I will say this. You mentioned in your intro that there are over 600 agencies.
600.
Yeah, but there are also over 400 government government-owned enterprises that are supposed to be revenue generating, that do not remit anything back into the national coffers and the treasury, that instead keep collecting. The state keeps allocating budgets to run this, and they are supposed to be economic enterprises. And the fact is, they do make profit.
So is it the will to have them bringing back this
It's corruption.
funds?
Corruption has become a huge business and a huge industry. That multiple layers of politicians, of government personnel benefit from this corruption. It's not in anybody's interest. Well, that's not true. It is in our interest, but it is not in their interest, to do anything about this, because they benefit, very seriously.
As long as it exists, they will continue
they will continue to benefit from it, and as long as they continue to benefit from it, whether the country benefits from it or not makes no sense to them. So take another issue, the issue of what the governors are recommending, and that's why I say we should be very careful what we wish for. We should not follow politicians just blindly into the cost of governance crisis, because by reducing cost of governance, what they simply mean is sacking workers.
We'll come back to what the governors are proposing, but let me at this point bring in Desmond. I know you have a lot to say about this, but I'm going to distract you for a minute, but you can comment on where he started, because constitutionally a president must appoint ministers from all states of the federation. So how important is the Nigerian constitution in addressing the cost of governance, or is it even a problem? So you can put the two together.
Yeah, I think excuse me, I think there is a defect in that. As much as our diversity requires that we make provision for all the states, because if you maybe do not make provision for any state, you seclude any state, there will be that crisis of marginalization and all of those questions coming up. But as much as we have that, all right, even the federal character that we all talk about and everything, there is need for us to actually reduce some of these numbers. How many of these ministers are actually working? You want to ask that question? Some of the ministers are not needed. Some of the ministries do not even need to be created. Why do you need to have different kinds of ministries that are performing similar jobs? All right? And why do you also need to have certain parastatals that are similar in function, more or less like duplication of responsibilities? All of those crises are there. In any case, why do we even need to have 36 states? Because if you do not have 36 states, you will not need to create ministries that will accommodate at least 36 ministers. Why do we need all of these things? Of course, some people have advocated for going back to geopolitical zones and all of those things. Yes, there may be also crisis in that, but we can redefine some of these things. We don't need some of the numbers that we have today. And it's painful that some lawmakers, some people are still agitating for creation of more states, when the states that you have created, they are not viable.
They can't even run on their own.
How many of these states can generate enough resources to pay salaries alone in their states? You need to ask that question, not to start talking about capital expenditures. So those are some of the crises that you have. You see, I think the Constitution is something we really need to look into. I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I can't say I have so much knowledge about that. But some of the things we have seen that the Constitution promotes, all right, are not in the interest of Nigeria and the development of the country itself. And we need to first of all start thinking in that area. Unfortunately, every attempt to amend the Constitution has only ended up as a means, as a conduit pipe, all right, for the lawmakers.
I mean, constitutional amendment gobs 1 billion naira in every 4 years.
Minimum.
It's a ritual.
Minimum.
Oh, minimum.
Minimum of 1 billion.
It's a ritual. And we must start getting it right.
So do you think that the Constitution on its own is an enabler of the high cost of governance?
I think it is. Simply put, I think it is. I think it is. Because if you also look at the civil service, for example, all right, some of the numbers that you have there as workers, as much as I am not an advocate of reducing the
number of workers.
Yeah, I'm not an advocate, because of course the government needs to create jobs for the people, first and foremost, genuinely. But there are inefficiencies in governments. There are certain people that do not need to be there. If we promote efficiency in governments, all right, you will the fund that you have will be more useful to you. That's what they call multiplier effect. But whereby there is inefficiency, whereby you recruit people based on who know man, there's a person where corruption favor, and I be saying get connect. Just to say it in local parlance. All right. All right, when you reduce inefficiency in government, of course, you will free more funds for proper development. For as much as you continue to promote inefficiency, of course, my brother already spoke about corruption. We cannot overemphasize that. For as long as there is corruption in the system, there is no way you have funds for capital development. And when you don't invest in infrastructure, the whole system is going to suffer. And that is where we are today.
You talked about inefficiency. So how do we promote efficiency in government?
Well, first of all, you have to recruit rightly. Leadership recruitment process is also another thing you need to look into. When you recruit your leaders, whether presidents, governors, local government chairmen, or even appointments of some of the ministers, commissioners, and every other person that is in power. For example, if you appoint or elect wrongly, the answer you have will also be wrong at the end of the day. They say garbage in,
Garbage out.
So that is one thing you have to look at. Then secondly, what is the recruitment process of civil servants? All right? How many people have gotten jobs because they merit the job, not because they know somebody in position of power? Have you gone to Area 3? You go the Civil Service Commission? Go and pick up the form there. It's just a ritual. At the end of the day, some of this recruitment are done under the table. You don't know how to get into the system.
So these are the foundation to...
So it's a very big problem. It's hydra-headed, all right? That you cannot just look at it from one perspective and you solve this very problem.
All right. Let's get Jaye Gaskia involved now into... let's narrow it down to this administration, because truly Nigerians had expected that Buhari-led federal government will cut down cost of governance. I mean, he promised that as well during the campaigns. What do you think are the administration's limitation to cutting cost of governance? And why do you think Orosonye's report continues to be overlooked?
Okay. So the first part of this is the fact that, simply put, and then I'll explain it. Simply put, the biggest obstacle, the biggest reason why this administration has not been able to
cut cost.
Yeah, the cost of governance is simple. It's a self limitation that it has put on itself. I mean, so yes, we agree. We know that there are structural problems. Okay, but governments are elected to deal with structural problems. Governments are not elected to simply just sleep.
I mean, existence will not be
Exactly.
interesting if there are no problems
exactly.
to solve.
So that's your job. And so you need to then see, okay, what are the structural problems that you need to, and that should define your priority. So the challenges have been self-imposed, and that's simply because we are still dealing with politicians. You mentioned something about leadership recruitment. I think that leadership recruitment has to be broadened beyond the civil service. It has to be the political leadership. You know, if we do not reform our political process and have reformed politicians, it's going to be extremely very difficult to do the things that we want to be done, because you need people who are selfless. You need people who put the nation first. You need people whose way of building influence is not through patronage, and that's our political system. The more successful you are as a politician, the larger your patronage base, the base that you have, and so the greater the necessity for you to look for resources to fund, and nurture that patronage base, because your substance depends on your patronage, and so you have to steal in order to be able to do that. And so unless we reform that, it's going to be
looking at the personality of President Muhammadu Buhari before he came. I'm sure you wouldn't have expected that he would not have the audacity and the guts, the balls to cut down the government expenditures. Remember, we still have the presidential fleet is still out there. We still have more ministries. and agencies, more agencies
So-
created this time. You remember the aviation industry
Yeah.
had to now
Had to
become
now
a self,
Mhm.
become on their
A
own.
different
It used to be
ministry.
under Ministry of Transportation, and a whole lot.
And the National Assembly members are also advocating for bills to set up new commissions.
New commissions, absolutely. And
So,
that
do
was
you
the point
expect that we will be here?
from
You know,
from him?
yes.
From this president? Okay, let me also put it this way. Maybe for people who are younger, maybe there was that expectation. See, I cut my teeth as an activist, fighting Buhari's regime as a military dictator, you know. So I mean, for those of us, for some of us, not all of us, who came from that generation, we weren't really expecting anything, decisive from this particular president and from this crop. If you look at our country since 1999, it's been dominated really by retired generals, by the military. So it's been a military contraption that has remained a military contraption. Yeah, but let's quickly go back to the Orosaye's report. You know, you say, why is it? I think that the challenge with the Orosaye's report is that it is the way it is. There are things that are said in that report, for example, about merging agencies
MDs.
that are simply duplicating efforts and the rest of that. Okay, yeah. So and all of those things are the things that you actually, as a government, you need to look at. So which agencies are actually really duplicating whatever. And you know the funny thing about this duplication of efforts and why duplication is really very dangerous is that you duplicate, okay? So you create multiple agencies, okay, and then you cannot recruit. Actually, you cannot recruit what is sufficient to actually run the agencies, and because you create those agencies simply as how do you call it, just to food for the boys, you don't really expect anything from them in any case. So you just put. So what you do is that you duplicate agencies. You put staff, you spread personnel across all of these agencies. But if they are merged and staff brought together and they actually work to fulfill the mandate of the agency, because that's another problem. An agency is established for a purpose.
Yes.
Okay? So look at the oil and gas sector and look at DPR and all of that. Okay? We know, for instance, that there are close to in the region of about $50 billion, okay, in uncollected, unremitted revenue in the oil and gas sector alone that has accumulated over the years. Okay, and when I say over the years, I mean since 1999. We're not talking about beyond 1999. There was even a court judgment about a $62 billion debt that 4 oil majors are supposed to be owing Nigeria, arising from what would have been variations in contracts. And they claim that the contracts were not renegotiated, but the contracts that they were using before stated that when oil prices per barrel rises above a particular something, then it will change, and that never happened. Okay, and what would have accrued to the country was what the court calculated and said it was $62 billion. Okay, now so if that is too big, you then set up a process to negotiate, isn't it? So that at least you don't lose everything. But nothing has been done, you know. So we have to ask ourselves the question: what is the purpose of the state, and what is the purpose of governance? Because that's the only way. So look, let me give you an example. Take the UK with the NHS. It's one of the largest in the world. Okay, and it's part of government. So and that means that the UK government is actually very big. But would you say that is a waste? Given the fact, so that's the purpose. That's what I'm saying. That if you define the purpose of the government and agencies, and you have agencies that are fit for purpose, you are not duplicating. They are fit for purpose. They're supposed to carry out some work. The purpose of the civil service and the public services really to do what? Is to oil governance, is to oil the economy, is to ensure that the economy is regulated in a manner that you then generate revenue that government can then collect. So, but if these agencies are also not working, it means you also cannot collect the revenue that you are expected to collect, even if those revenue are being generated. So you have a problem, with that. And this is an election season. So it's important that actually citizens should actually be looking at this, because people simply just talk. And people are making promises now about the several things they are going to establish and set up and the rest of that. And we should be asking, okay, so what happens to the ones that are there already? And how are you going to fund these new ones that you want to establish and all of that?
So we should be mindful of the promises, the bogus promises that will come.
I think it's important we also add to what Mr. Gaskia has said, that's Oronsaye report, all right? There were about 263 statutory agencies, all right, which were supposed to be reviewed, right? Out of that 263, that I have here, shows that 161 were supposed to be reduced, all right? That 38 of them were supposed to be abolished completely. They don't have reasons why they should be existing, right? And about 52 of them were supposed to be merged, while 14 of them were supposed to be returned back to the ministries as departments. They're not supposed to be standing
on their own.
All right. You're just a department reporting to another DG or another head of so why are you now existing on your own? In practical terms, you want to ask yourself certain questions. Why do you have road safety and you have VRO? Have you asked that question? And both of them will stand on the road collecting money from people because they don't control traffic these days. Most time you see traffic are not around Abuja. It's not because the people are so unruly. It's because these people are stopping the vehicle to extort money from them. Go to Area 1 roundabouts. That's Stadium roundabouts. Go there. You will see it's happening now as I'm talking to you.
All right.
And that's all the things that we are talking about. And it is not until the presidents, the governors intervene in these things. People at bottom down the ladder also are contributing to some of this problem that we are having.
All right, we'll get back to you on that to expand on that. But
we need to get the person listening at the other end of the dial to join the conversation.
So please follow us on our social media platforms at Official Prime Hub.
What would be your own contribution to the conversation? How do you think the cost of governance can be reduced in Nigeria? And do you think corruption is an incentive for the government's lack of will to reduce cost of governance over the years? Hello, your name and where you're calling us from?
My name is Adribe Isaac Taiwo, calling from Peggy in Kuje.
Let's hear you, Taiwo.
Yeah, Mr. Gaskia and Mr. Desmond, we appreciate your input this morning. But like the late Afrobeat legend once said, VBG in power, VGD in power. Successive government lack the political will to implement the Oronsaye report because of ethnic, tribal, religious, and political consideration. And all of this breeds nepotism and corruption ultimately. Just as Desmond rightly mentioned, what the proliferation of duties in the security agents, civil defense, road safety, VIO have no business to be an autonomous agency. I also take an instance of the National Population Commission and the National Identity Management Commission. Duplication of duties, causing confusion, and all of this will amount to resources wastage. Please, we are begging the government to implement that Oronsaye report. Of course, there is a need for it to be reviewed. Thank you for the opportunity. Nigeria will be great again in my lifetime.
Thank you so much, Mr. Taiwo Aderebibe, for your contribution. Hello, your name and where you're calling us from?
My name is Francis. I'm calling you from Galadimawa.
Let's hear you, Francis.
Yeah, the truth is, our guests have spoken it all. But I think the way forward to reduce the excessive spending in governance is cutting down costs. Like, for instance, in the area where I stay here, a minister for one the other day was going out because there was traffic. A minister was carrying about 6 jeeps, 4 pickup, and 2 police vans. You can imagine the cost of fueling all those cars just to go out. I don't think it's going to work or something. A minister. You can imagine that kind of thing. So if we must go forward, just like our guest has said, one of such things is to cut down cost of governance, most of those convoys they are using are excessive. They are excessive in spending. And I think that is one way forward. And the agencies responsible for checkmating these people need to get to work, especially the EFCC, the ICPC, and the whatever, to be checkmating how these people spend people's money. It's very, very key and important. God bless you. There's hope for Nigeria.
Thank you. Indeed, there is hope for Nigeria. The next question I would direct it to Desmond while we are waiting for other calls. The last caller mentioned the number of convoy that some of these ministers move around with. My question now would be in the area of the bicameral legislature that we have currently in Nigeria. Do you think Nigeria still needs a National Assembly of over 460 people and the ministers driving with lots of cars in the convoy?
Yes, I think there are two ways to this from my own perspective. One, if you have an office as high as that of a minister, there are certain privileges that come with it. We can't deny that fact, all right? But abusing those privileges is what is a problem, all right? Whether we like it or not, the minister probably might not be able to go with just one vehicle because he might have
but 8 in this case.
Yeah, he might need 8.
That's what the guy said.
Excessive.
Okay.
Yes, he decided to. I wouldn't know where he's going and where he was coming from. It's possible they went out for a major event, all right? But ordinary movement, I'm not sure a minister may need more than 2 cars.
Yeah.
Because there needs to be a backup car. What about if anything happens to the main car he's driving? All right, that's why you always make provision for a backup car. All right, sometimes you have an outrider that goes with the minister. So all of those must be provided for, whether we like it or not. But going with 8 for just an ordinary visitation or something may be excessive. All right, but if they went for a special program, like you went out to commission projects and they are coming back, of course you could have that kind of entourage going with such a minister. So we need to understand the context in which that minister was moving at that point in time. But abuse of it, like I've said earlier on, is something that is intolerable. Sure. I'm one of the persons that believe that we need to reduce the number of lawmakers. If possible, can even make it a part-time thing, if possible. All right. If you see, for the executive, for example, I'm already against it that some governors have up to 1,000 aides. I don't know what they need them for. Some of them do not have portfolio. I heard of a governor some time ago in one of the states in the north. Let me just try not to mention the name. He sees somebody on the road. I've not seen you for a very long time. Once I've tried to see you and all of those things. Okay, fine, okay. He gives him an appointment. You are my PA on this.
Just like that.
Just like that. And the next time he sees the person, how are you? Okay, so I'm your PA on this. Oh, I appointed you. You know, there are instances like that. All right, but what do you need that kind of numbers for? I wouldn't know, but like we've already established before, it is sometimes job for the boss. The National Assembly, where you have those lawmakers, 469, if you need to know the exact number, 109 in the Senate and 360 in the House of Reps. These lawmakers also have their aides. Of course, they have to do their jobs.
And retinue of staff
yes,
also.
They have those people, at least 3. With them in Abuja, the senior legislative aide, the other 2 aides, and of course the secretary and all of those people. Then of course the people that also represent them at the various constituency level. Those are the numbers they go with. Do they need to work in the interest of the public? Yes, they have to do the assignment. But do we need the numbers? I will say we don't.
We don't.
And the problem still comes from the constitution. I must say this. If you look at a state, the delineation of constituency, for example, is very political. And you have this because the constitution already provided for this number of states. If you have 36 states, definitely you have to have 3 senators from that state. If you didn't have up to 36 states, you definitely would not have had about 109 senators. If you do not have 36 states, you will not also have 360 House of Reps members. So all of these things are part of the problem that we are talking about. So my own take would be, if we have to start addressing all of these things, there might just be need. I don't know if it is too late. There might just be need for us to merge certain states, because these states are not viable to start with. So there is no need for them producing lawmakers that will come to Abuja and consume more money. The same funds that we are looking for, that we do not have to put food on the table of Nigerians, to give to improve the standard of our educational system, to improve the standard of our healthcare facilities, and maybe look at most of the doctors, they are even on their way out of their country because of the way things are. So there is need for us to reduce the number. If possible, merge it.
If possible,
If
merge
possible,
it.
merge it. That is my own take.
Okay, thank you for that. Hello, your name and where you're calling us from?
Yeah, I'm coming from Abuja.
Your name, please.
I'm calling from Abuja.
Okay, let's hear you, Innocent.
Okay, my concern is that the salary level of the average worker is not uniform. And they are level 8 or level 10 of years, I expect the salary to be uniform, both the politicians, so that the politician will not be wasting our money. But if you look at the farmers and salary compared to other people in government, if you talk about the money times 4 or 5, even the legislators. So I would expect the government to make sure that the salary is uniform, so that nobody in the market money is government people in the market.
So in other words, you're proposing that we make governance unattractive.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, so that nobody is just come and find and other people will be suffering. Then, and how is that Nigerians, whether you are a civil servant or you are not a civil servant, as a city of this country, they are entitled to own constitution. So I would expect the government to move in that direction, so that if there should be certain amount of money earmarked for those who are not working for their Nigerians, so that everybody will have at least something on their table until they want to do.
Okay. Thank you so much. Making governance unattractive.
I can imagine how impossible this could be, because yes, you can help me out here, because even among ministries and agencies, they are not earning the same. Talking of politicians.
Okay, before you respond, let me take another call. Hello, let's hear you.
Yeah, the problem we have is that we should stop practice indirect systems of government. And when we stop it, we practice direct systems of government and create all national level acts. Because if you can see, all their constituency project money, and they are not doing anything, they are just sitting there and nobody is coming out to challenge them. So if we can scrape out National Assembly entirely, even in the state, the state assembly, we scrape the act. We actually direct system of government subject to the president government directly, so that all this corruption will stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I don't see
lots
it happening.
of propositions there.
We must tell ourselves the truth. No country runs without
representatives.
But let's get to Jai Gaskia now. Let's start to look for solution. As you respond to the callers, you can also, let's bring this question to your doorstep. In about 9 months, the current administration will elapse. I'm sure, I don't know what you're expecting, still expecting from them. But what should be the government's long-term, short, medium, and long-term approach to reducing cost of governance?
The very first thing is that you need to, like I said, you need to define the purpose of government and of governance. And that's why in other climes, politicking is done on the basis of manifestos. Manifestos that deal with issues and electoral platforms deriving from your party's manifesto but addressing the current issues in the country. And so it's saying, how are we going to address this? Because, and I'm saying this because it's important. So we've had all this talk about, for instance, subsidy and the challenges of subsidy. But all of us know why there is a subsidy. We know.
Yes.
We know that the reason why there is a subsidy is because we are dependent on import of refined products, and that our naira is also traded against the dollar. And so those two are the factors that determine the landing cost of fuel. And if you want to make that fuel affordable, if you leave it at the landing cost, it's not going to be affordable. You are going to have crisis. So you then need to breach, that cost. So we know that that's the problem. And we know that we didn't always have that problem. So, my worry is that every time we talk about subsidy removal and the rest of that, people simply just focus on the cost
And not looking
and
at
not
the root
looking at how
cause.
do we produce. If since 1999 we had focused on how do we produce,
Production.
we would have solved that problem. But the issue is we have accepted. It seems that we have accepted that we must be dependent on import. And so the issue is, okay, how do we now deal with that? Remove subsidy. Why is it that we are the only OPEC member country? One of the largest OPEC producers. But why is that we are the only OPEC producer that imports 90% of our refined products? Why? Does that make sense? It doesn't. So if we focus on production, if we focus on what you need to do to get these things right, and it's the same thing that we do. That's why everywhere we've had, how do you call it, in the agricultural sector, we've had investments in value chains since 1999. All of these value chains are to prepare agricultural products for export as raw materials.
Again, can we link corruption to
Of
the
course.
reason why we are not producing?
It is because people benefit from this import regime. It's good, it's okay, as long as I benefit. So those are the kind of things that I think needs to be done now, and those are the kind of questions that we need to be asking politicians as they come to us now. Concrete questions. I will quickly just talk about one thing. When we are in a crisis, oftentimes when we are in a crisis, just like with the oil and gas something, we don't look at the issues. What is the purpose of a government? If a government is supposed to be representative, then you have to define as a people what is the ratio for representation. You want one representative to what number of the population? That's what should determine the number of people in the National Assembly. And
So it should be disproportional.
Yes, because you said they are representatives. They are representing people, populations. So we must then decide, and that's why in other climes, after they do their census, after every 10-year census, they will find out that in some constituencies you have to change the boundaries because the population, maybe they say 1 to 50,000. Now there are 60 or 80,000 people living there. You have to delimit it. So that's what we need to do. We are complaining now, because these people simply are not doing anything and they are not benefiting us. But ordinarily, if you want a representative government where citizens actually participate in this, then it must be proportional. It must be proportional to a certain size of the population. And do we need a bicameral legislature? I think it depends on whether we want to remain a federation or we don't want to remain a federation. Because a bicameral legislature means just one thing. Actual representation is done in the one that is based on population. The other one is based on equality of the states.
Okay.
Okay. And that means that states have to be there to say that, okay, look, because I'm small, it doesn't mean that other states that are big are going to override me. But I do agree with him. Do we need 3 senators? Maybe we need only 2 senators.
That's
do we need?
Or we can make it on part-time basis.
Or one senator.
Because of our time, I want to quickly say that there are so many agencies of government at the state and federal level that have idle staff. In Abuja, federal staff in some MDAs go to work on rotation because they are not properly engaged. Desmond, in 1 minute, how do we reduce the recurrent expenditure to show up revenues for capital expenditure? In 1 minute, please.
Well, the first thing is, like I said before, you have to look at it from the perspective of efficiency. There are some people that are there that aren't supposed to be there. Corruption is also part of the whole problem, all right? There are so many things that appear in the budget on a yearly basis that shouldn't be there. If you pick up the budgets, all right, every year you do your comparison, you realize that there are so many things that appeared last year that come back this year, and of course they are coming back again next year, all right? Those duplications are some of the things that you need to first of all look at, and if you are not very careful, you might not see them, right? Because people are so very skilled in burying these things in those budget lines. So people need to start becoming sincere and start thinking Nigeria, because until we start looking at this thing from the perspective of whatever I do today, all right, is hurting the system, and ultimately will hurt you tomorrow. The people you didn't take care of yesterday by way of giving them education and you left in abject poverty are the people that are giving the leaders and you and I trouble today by way of insecurity.
Okay.
That is why we need to start looking at solving this problem holistically.
Thank you so much. Sincerity of purpose, and that's how we are wrapping it up on today's episode of Public Conscience.
All right, we have to go, but I must have to leave this word with all of us that unexamined life is not worth living, according to Socrates. Please visit the news page of our website, primognews.org. That is primognews.org. For all the details of our reports and interviews, visit our website, www.primog.org, to get all the information about Primog.
And you can watch our videos on Primog TV, our YouTube channel. Please subscribe to get reminders when we have a new post. We sincerely appreciate our guest, the convener, Campaign for Transformative Governance, Jaye Gaskia, and the publisher, Fresh News online newspaper, Desmond Otowen. Thank you so much for being a part of today's episode.
Thank you for having me.
Public Conscience has the support of the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, committed to building a more just, verdant and peaceful world. Get more information about the foundation on its website, macfound.org.
Join us again here next week for another episode of Public Conscience. And remember to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Official Primog. I am Chidozie Obunna.
And remember that birth registration and birth certificate are both free if your child is under 18. Help stop the corruption in birth registration and do not pay for birth certificates. Also remember that you can give us information or hint about corrupt acts through our phone 0902-265-6167 or info@primorg.org. I am Adaobi Obiabumo. Stay safe.